Middle?
You want your...
Middle? And?
Wherever you like. I'm here.
In your way. Here. Yeah, no, I'm good. Hello.
Good evening.
Where's the coffee?
How are you?
Oh, he's got it.
Good. I hope so. What a joy, what an evening we're in for. It is great to see you all here, obviously, and I'm so honored and thrilled to have my mates, my favorite guitar quartet of all planets, right here with us. But before I start, I do have to say something, and I know we've all talked about this, that, you know, a week ago yesterday, the guitar world lost one of its really, truly towering artists in Roland Dian. So we just wanted to acknowledge Roland. He was, it didn't matter what he did, whether it was, he was beloved composer, probably the most performed composer outside of Leo Brouwer, a beloved arranger, an extraordinary arranger, and a great teacher, and of course a great performer and recording artist. So is a big one for us, and I know we all feel the same about missing Roland. So, now I do want to say that tonight, for you, I know that we have 3 high schools here, and I should have them memorized, but I do want to give a shout out to the Eleanor Roosevelt High School from Yorkville, the James Madison High School, yes, and the Susan E. Wagner High School from Staten Island, yes. So, thrilled to have you here, and thank you to the teachers and the parents that brought you here. And what I want to say to you kids, you high school students, you're not kids, high school students, is that I think, in my humble opinion, that many years from now, you are going to say, I was there. I was there when the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet performed the premiere of the legendary jazz guitarist Pat Metheny's grand work called Road to the Sun. I think that tonight, without being too grand, is real guitar history. Here you have Pat Matheny, who is, one of the greatest jazz guitarists of any era and composer, and then this quartet. And if you just think about what the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet and what Pat Matheny have given us collectively, given the guitar and given the world, it's staggering. So right there, I need a round of applause just for the work they've done all their lives. Incredible. It's incredible. So tonight, I want to start really to discuss this piece that you're all going to hear. And I'll start off with, I was on the island of Maui with this guy named John Dearman over here. And John and I are driving in Maui, going to the beach. And John says to me, I got to play you this track by Pat Matheny. In fact, we're kind of thinking of having him write a piece for us. So with that, can you tell us about the genesis of this piece, from that time when we were driving along in the car?
The funny thing is, I think it was actually just a month after that we were in Montana, and
right.
We played at this guitar festival that Pat had played at in the past, and in fact, Scott had met him the previous year. So we played there in 2014. Pat played, he came to our concert, and he came backstage and he said, I'm a big fan of you guys, and we're like, who's he talking to? Really love what you guys have done. We had recorded an arrangement of one of his pieces, and let's see, it's a bit of a long story, but just to kind of fast forward it, I followed up by email, and we started a halting correspondence because he would kind of disappear for months at a time from email. And it was going to originally be, the piece was going to be commissioned by this festival in Montana, and then right around that time, and then it seemed like, okay, this is actually going to happen, this is going to go, and then right then Pat started a 220-day concert tour, and then he completely, sort of disappeared, and then the funding kind of went away, and long story short, last November, about a year ago now, out of the blue, I hadn't heard from Pat in like 9 months.
We had kind of written it off.
Yeah, and we thought this
because he
probably
said,
isn't going to happen.
It's going to happen, I'm going to do it, but I mean, we were actually supposed to premiere it here a year ago.
Right.
That's
that
right.
was the
Yeah.
original.
I actually do know that.
Yeah.
So we had lost our funding, and then out of the blue, I got an email from Pat, and he said, "Do you still want to do that piece? Because I have a 5-week period coming up in December, and I have this thing all mapped out in my head, and I'm going to do it if." And of course, we thought, well, there's no way we can pay for this right now. But I said, okay, yeah, no problem, go for it, and so.
So don't lose hope.
Right, exactly. So so he cranked it out, and then through the generous support of people like the 92nd Street Y, we were able to put together a consortium of presenters who funded the project, and
Well,
now we have it. And,
Part of what it was so amazing to have Pat actually write the piece, but the original idea of the piece was it was going to be 10 to 12 minutes, and we had a certain
Right.
amount that we were going to apply for a grant. And I still remember we all got an email on December 31st last year, and it said, I still have to orchestrate it, for each part, but I've got the roadmap of the entire piece, and it's 28 minutes long.
So you got your money's worth.
And oh, by the way, the commission fee is now, double.
Right, right.
But actually, what happened was it was like this huge challenge, but it actually worked so great for us because we were sort of forced to find other commissioners, and got last week we played in Santa Barbara by one of the commissioners, and we played on a jazz series. Which that's never happened for us, that we got booked on a jazz series, and they thought it was really cool and stuff. And so we actually have 7 different commissioners, and it's
Which kind of gets into a question I want to ask later.
Yeah.
But wonderful. Let there be more jazz series. Have you on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's great to cross that barrier. So now I understand that Pat, instead of writing as a composer normally would, guitar 1, 2, 3, 4, Pat actually wrote your names in and specifically wrote the parts to you. Can you say a little bit about that? Mr. T?
I'll answer, not to take over, but
Yeah.
I'll let you guys answer the rest, because he wrote me again to ask about that. He said, "Is there anything I should know?" And I basically told him, as far as the makeup of the group and the way we think of ourselves as players, I said, first of all, I play the 7-string guitar, and often I'll function in the group, especially when we do world music or crossover-y, jazzy things. I'll just kind of function like a bass guitar, So I said, we have that resource, and I'm happy if you just want to just have me do bass all the time. That's totally fine. Secondly, Matt is an awesome jazz musician, super versatile musician in general, and he can do groove, he can comp, he can improvise, he can do anything. Scott, I said, I think you know about Scott. Basically, if there's anything you want to do that seems impossible, just give it to Scott. You can do it.
Thanks.
Scott hates it when I say that, I know, because he doesn't want to give anybody ideas.
Well, I just don't want the really hard
Yeah,
parts. That's
but he's
I never did.
a phenomenally lyrical player, and also a groove meister in his own right. And then Bill is like your prototypical first violin kind of personality and player, and he's naturally going to be the
shy.
person and
Wallflower.
Yeah, very humble, and yeah.
Now,
No, but yeah, something like that.
In that vein, do you guys feel that the parts are sort of
Yeah,
akin
absolutely.
to you? I mean, do you feel like they
well.
reflect and give you the freedom of your own expression, your guitar person,
I actually found a lot more out about myself by playing the part called Scott.
Really?
I did, yes. Yeah, there was a lot there I didn't know.
You had to look at yourself.
I looked deeply, and it's really more me than I thought I was. So
And do you feel better as a person?
I feel much better.
Bill, do you want to say anything? Do you feel better as a person now that you see that it actually says your name on it?
Now that I've gone through therapy about it, yes.
Now, continuing on that theme, Matt, how much improvisation is there improvisation in this piece? And if so, what kind of language can we expect or not? Or
Originally, there wasn't much improvisation. He, at least as far as soloing that you're talking about, he wrote out a large solo section and gave us each a turn. But it was basically his language, his soloing language. But recently, he's modified that a little bit. He thinks it'll work a little better if we actually do, to some degree, improvise during our spot. So, you know, to one degree or another, we're all taking up that challenge. And,
Is it, can you give sort of is there 8 measures, 10 measures? I mean, what kind of
it's like
boundaries do you have?
12 measures each or so. Mine's a little more extended.
Actually, if I could just add one kind of cool thing, I'll kind of combine 2 stories. So you're going to talk later about the whole process of working with him and everything.
Right.
But one just kind of shortcut, or jumping ahead a little bit. After the Denver premiere, there was a recording of that concert, which we all got to listen to, and he listened to it. And about a week later, it was actually 2 days before the second performance in Santa Barbara, we got an email from him, which I printed out the email so that I could, highlight and bullet point like stuff that particularly applied to me. It was 10 pages long, 10 pages of commentary about the recording he heard. The piece is 960 measures or something. It seemed like he talked about every single measure in the piece. And anyway, there was one point where he said, about the improv thing, I'm kind of starting to think like it would be great if you guys would go ahead and maybe try that on your own. And so he said, okay, so Matt, Matt, you're fine. For you other guys, here's what you got to do. Now, in this first section, you can play these notes, A, B, C, F, G, and then just. So he kind of gave this little. He almost said it that way. I'm going to give you a little primer, like, in how to improvise. And anyway, Bill's the only one brave enough to do it yet, but I like my Pat Matheny solo, so I'm still playing it. But I'm tinkering with it.
Well, on that kind of note of talking about soloing stuff, like the demands that are put on you in terms of technical, I know, and groove. Like let's talk about groove, since he is a groove meister among many, many other things. Yeah, but you people you have worked with Sergio, and you've had the Brazil project, so you really are what I would call quite a rhythmic. Wonderfully, you've really encountered many wild, rhythms that you've really mastered.
Yeah, Duchan, the Balkan guys.
Thank you. So how is Pat's sense of rhythm or quote groove different, and what kind of things have you found challenging?
Well, it's really, I'll backtrack just slightly to say that, he wrote this amazing piece for us, but when we were first learning it, it was like, what exactly does he want here? It was really difficult. He did record himself playing some things, and that was like helpful. It gave us a little hint. But then about a month before the premiere, his schedule worked out that he could come to LA for one day. And we had this like 8-hour like intensive, thing. And that helped. And then before we played it in Denver, we got another session with him, and then we got that list. And then yesterday we had a 5-hour rehearsal with him upstairs.
Until 1 in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. But he kept saying that one of the reasons he liked what we've done over the years is he said, I know you guys can groove, and which maybe is not all classical guitarists have the ability to groove, but it really was a challenge to like get his groove, especially for some of the, maybe I can just show you one.
It begs the question. Yeah, go ahead.
There's, the main vibe of the piece, the main chord progression is. And what we see in the music is just. We see those chords, and then it says strum, and sometimes it has like a pattern over it. And so when we first were doing it ourselves, we were like. And then he would say, yeah, that's good, but I really want this, I want it to feel like it's in 3, not in 6. So he really wants that 3 thing, but then last night he was like, okay, think Ramones. It's the Ramones. And
interesting.
And he went, now, in fairness, he got his pick out and he was doing it, and it was like, God, why can't we sound like that? Because it was just the nuance of, and I'm not doing a great job, but at least watching him do it, and us, we kind of traded off, and he played it and we played it, we did it together, and I think we're getting closer.
I think a really good example, I don't know if Matt would mind showing it, but the second movement, just your intro, that's a different, this is a really big kind of, rocky thing, but Could you?
What, you're just talking about the beginning?
Yeah, just the opening, and this is really like kind of what you think about groove, because it's not just rhythm, but it's
That's
like
a
touch.
totally different.
Yeah.
There's many different kind of rhythmic patterns and feels to this. This one is slightly like bossa nova inspired, like way in the background as far as where it came from. And then there's that strummer kind of Americana feel. And then the solo section is more just like a band, you know, like a backbeat kind of thing. You know, that kind of groove. So there's different kinds, but this, yeah, let's see if I can remember it. You know,
Right.
so that's just
that to me
one.
sounds very Pat-like.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So
And he made this big point because there's the two main big movements are they're in 6/8 or 3/4, and so you know, and there's a lot of chord changes and accents that are ga ga da ga da. You know, that 2 against 3.
Right.
But he said it's really important. He said it drives me crazy even with my band members, even with great guys. It's got to still feel in 3. And he said if it starts getting 6/8, you know, and so you're playing these dom, bom, 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 but inside you have to go boom, 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 boom.
I see, yeah.
Dom, dom, dom. Drive
Right,
it
and
in
that's
3.
really what a groove is like having a group, everybody's feeling the subdivisions the same way, the nuances the same way, you know, you have to have some commonality in the approach, the style really is what it is. And it's hard to put into words. It's
Right.
hard for
I
anybody.
know, even to say
'Cause
to
it's-
the audience, what is a groove? You know.
Right, it's not necessarily metronomic, it's people feeling it
It's
the
feeling,
same
yeah.
way and aligning, you know, in a certain way. Yeah,
Even
it's
the word
tricky.
even the word groove is so great because it implies everyone falls into the same
Exactly.
and it's, you know, that concept of entrainment, you know, where you know, in nature that cycles unify,
yeah.
and it's that connection in music that's so important.
Right.
And when it's not grooving, you know it. You can play all the right notes kind of at the right time,
Right.
but if it's not grooving, you can just, and that's that magic other thing that's happening with music, which I pray happens tonight.
It will. It will. I guarantee you. I mean, since you mention it, and I definitely wanted to a question that I wanted to ask, but Scott just says you were here until 1 last night. So this has been your 4th intense rehearsal, or 3rd with Pat,
Yeah.
not counting the LA one, or counting the LA one.
Including
Count-
LA.
counting
Third
the-
counting
So,
LA.
and you know, I think you started at 7 last night, or 8, or
Yeah.
5 hours last night. So it was a
say no more. So 5 hours. Can you just let us inside, like what happens in a 5-hour rehearsal with Pat Matheny and the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet? What are some of the things that you cover?
He's a true perfectionist. I mean, he, you know, in every case, we've started from the beginning and started, you know, we start the piece, and then measure by measure, you know, he'll stop and go, okay, now be very detailed about what, how, and here's part of the groove thing. So what might be written would be, you know, dotted 8/16, dotted 8/6, da, 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 whatever. But no, it doesn't sound like that. It's more da, da, you have to flatten it out a little bit. So the da, 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 da becomes da, 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 more like a triplet, but it's not a triplet. So it's like, and he'll play it, and we'll play it, and he'll play it, and we'll play it, and finally we kind of get a little bit of an idea. And so this goes on literally several times in a page. Every few bars we'll stop and he'll give an absolute clear idea, not to us at first, but to him, exactly how he wants it to sound. And it's kind of like, you know, swinging. You know,
Right,
when you
I was
swing,
gonna say,
it's a
yeah.
subtle swing. It's not written swung. It's just written maybe eighth notes, but it's insinuated that it's implied. And so there are all these little implied things that go pretty deep. And so that's just kind of how it unfolds, you know.
We have the same thing in classical music. Like, obviously, there's
Inigo.
a good example is like French Baroque music, which is extremely difficult style to learn. And actually, it's really, I tell my students a lot of times, it's really a lot like, think of it like learning to speak French. and how difficult it is to actually have a convincing French accent when you're going from, from zero. And that's how difficult it is to play French music with that right kind of sound and feel to it, authenticity.
Right.
And it's the same with this,
I
actually.
mean, for us, it was like learning the new Matheny.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
At least one
I'm here all
person.
week.
At least one
Try the
person
meal.
laughed. Sorry. No, but okay, sorry about that.
No, I live for those. So go ahead.
Well, actually, he included in the piece a few times some very Spanish-sounding things to us. And so the thing is, being classical guitarists, we see the Spanish-sounding stuff, Phrygian stuff. We go,
all
oh,
over
we can now wail on flamenco, you
Right.
know. And it says strum, and it's got these real Phrygian flamenco riffs. And so we're flamencoing with that. Finally, something we can really do, you know. And so we're flamencoing away, and he goes, no. It can't sound Spanish there. And so, I mean, like not flamenco, very specifically not flamenco. And so, you have to really back off and find other ways to do it and soften it up, so it has more of a jazz groove instead of a flamenco.
Right.
Well, and another thing, there's quite a few times where he said, I don't really want you guys to be perfectly together here. I kind of like it. I kind of like it, when it's, like two guys are playing this melody, ba-da-da-da-da, and like one's a little bit behind or a little
Remember
bit
that when you
ahead.
hear it tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, actually, like there's this one spot where in the second movement where Scott's laying down this bum ba bum ba bum bum ba ba bum ba bum ba 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 ba, and I've got ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum, and I played it, and he's like, yeah, but he wants me to go bum ba bum 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 da dum da da dee dum, like in and over and around the beat, and we've worked all this time to like be together.
Right,
and now
right,
it's
right.
like,
We spend our entire careers. We're known
know.
for being together.
yeah, so, it's like, but,
Wow.
but it's just this different aesthetic. And, last night was a really, really great rehearsal because it was the first time where he really was demonstrating, like more
brought
than
a
just
guitar,
yeah, and he had a guitar he was really comfortable on it, and the nuance. I mean, when he tries to play with nails and with fingers, he's not as used to it, but then he gets the pick out and it's just like, I can't describe it, but just he plays that line, but da 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 da, and it just like had,
It's touch. It's what we call it's.
you know,
just the touch.
mine sounded like Kool-Aid and his was like a Lafitte 71. It was just so much stuff
reference
going
I
on,
There's the piece is 30 minutes long or 20,
28.
whatever. We'll be timing. I want you all the time. It's like, how do you navigate such a long work? I mean, it's 6 movements. They're a taka, right? Are they one after the next, or are there breaks?
There's 2 major breaks in the piece, and
Okay.
and actually, when we've sorry.
Nothing.
Yeah. When we've played them, people have sometimes applauded there, and he said, that's cool. He said, I don't mind if they applaud. But,
But so do you find, I mean, first of all, have you played many works that are this long? And do you find that the length of it is a new challenge just in
The
itself?
only one that was literally this long was the piece we did 20 years ago by Ian Krauss. Ian Krauss is a guy who's written.
I don't think it was even
6 or
this
7.
long. I think it was like 20-some minutes.
Yeah. So anyway, it was pretty close to the same length. I think it was 25. It was a huge, and it was called Labyrinth on a theme of Led Zeppelin.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
Right. That was a kind of a notorious piece that we did. Really hard piece.
Well, the Assad Concerto
Assad
maybe is
Concerto.
the same, but that's a concerto, so it's a
Right.
little different.
This piece actually,
It's unusual for us,
it actually, for us, and I hope the listeners too, it's so engaging that you just, everything, each movement at the end has the word segue.
Right, that's
Not a taka, but segue, meaning that, somehow it does lead in, each movement leads into the next one with different lengths of space. Some he wants long, some he wants pretty short, but it just, I don't know, it's a quick read. I mean, it seems to go by in a flash,
great.
At the
Great.
risk of kind of like predisposing people to like how to react. Just so you know, the piece ends very quietly. So that's how you'll know like when it's done. If you want to clap after the loud stuff, that's fine. We really don't care. And Pat was like, yeah, let people like go crazy. In fact, at one point he said after the fifth movement, if they clap, go ahead and stand up and take a bow, but then sit down and start playing again.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's not.
Well,
Okay.
the thing is, we didn't know what to expect. I mean, he's this unbelievable jazz player and improviser. But if you know some of his large-scale pieces for his group, he writes these almost quasi-symphonic things.
Well, he's written for orchestra. He has a whole CD of that. Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, you call him a jazz player, but he doesn't call himself a jazz musician.
Well,
you're getting to that, yeah.
That goes to my. It's killing me.
Nor
but
a guitar player.
Final questions,
Yeah.
but we have these labels, and you just said it.
Right.
We have jazz. He's a legendary jazz musician. You're a legendary classical guitar quartet. What are some of the differences you've noticed working with a jazz musician a jazz composer as opposed to a classical composer? Say Sergio or.
Well,
or any number of the people, yeah.
In the score, what's kind of interesting to us is all the notes are there that he very carefully orchestrated, but the chord changes are there the whole time too, like the chord symbols.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, the whole time. The whole time.
Get out
in fact,
of town.
There's one spot where
there's one spot in my part where I mean because the chord symbols, for those of you who've seen them, you'll see something like it'll have the capital letter D, and then there'll be a triangle next to it, which many of you know means major seventh. There'll be a minus sign, which means minor seventh, and then there'll be flat 9, and then +5, and then there'll be a slash, and then there'll be maybe a B or something. That means play that note in the bass. So this is like complicated thing, and the harmonies get quite complex and deep. And anyway, at one point in my part, it says G flat something. So the jazz musicians would love that one, I'm sure. Even Pat Matheny didn't know what it was. Yeah, they're hard to figure out sometimes because a lot of chords like that can be more than one thing depending on what context you think.
But the thing that I was, really pretty surprised about is, as a classical composition, there's a great deal of thematic unity in the piece. Like he has those 4 chords that I played. Like it's sort of like the overarching foundation of the whole piece. And in all these different iterations, it comes back. The piece begins with this very heartfelt section, which is kind of an epilogue at the end. The big second movement, its main groove thing is recapped in the 5th movement. There's a whole this rather ominous and slow and intense middle movement. There's a section where I don't want to give it away too much, but we use sound effects to really change the mood. And I think taken as a whole, it's kind of like you just don't know what's going to happen next. It's like he's really working with texture and color and groove, but there's this integrity underneath it, this like unifying stuff that is really rooted in classical architecture.
Great. Well, we could go on and on. I'm told I get that I have to stop, but we do have these 3 high schools here, and I promised that I would ask this question. So very quickly, they want to know any one-sentence advice you can give them, as they continue their career as young musicians and lovers of music. Matt, go.
One sentence. Figure out what you love and go with that. Practice, practice, practice. That's more than one sentence, sorry.
Perfect, John.
Get ready to work. Sorry.
Bill.
Find the best teacher you can find.
Yeah.
And finally, Scott.
You have to stick with it because careers just don't happen overnight, except with a couple of maybe YouTube sensations. But you have to. If you love it enough, you'll stick with it, and it'll happen.
And buy his book, Pumping Nylon.
But yeah.
All of his books. I can't thank you guys enough. Crazy love to you. Thank you so much.